Hello, so I'm here for another episode of Extra Vibes. Of course, once again, I'm joined by Lee Graham. Seems to become a regular pairing. This time, we'll be discussing the all of the Rival Sons albums. We'll be ranking them, of course, with the release of Darkfighter at the time of this episode's release. That'll have just come out. Lee was the only person I knew that had heard it in advance, considering that he's just interviewed Jay. Of course, that isn't part of the reason to why I've had Lee on. I thought your expertise would come in handy here, considering.
Expertise is a far-fetched, mate.
So I thought, especially off the back of us both interviewing Jay, it would be appropriate. So we'll kick things off. What is your lowest choice?
Yeah, like we were saying before we started recording, man, it's not easy one to choose because, like, you're a massive fan of Rival Sons.
This is it. It's like trying to choose a child. You know, you're at the do you really want to put this one at the bottom of the list? You're thinking about it, but somebody's got to be at the bottom.
Someone's got to be at the bottom, you say, and I've gone with Before the Fire, which was their first release of being at the bottom. The reason, don't get me wrong, it's got some great tracks on it, like Angel and Memphis Sun. Some great songs on it, but it's very much them. Obviously, it's their first album, so it's very much them at their sort of embryotic stage. I didn't hear this particular record until a few years after it was released, because I came in, like a lot of people, in at Pressure and Time. And with it being a self-funded album, the first album, you couldn't really get a hold of a copy so easy at that point. And so it took me a little while to find it. So by the time I found it, although it was cool to hear those songs in this and that sort of, like, say, that embryotic period of Rival Sons, I'd kind of missed the mark in that period of time where it would have been cool to hear, because Pressure and Time had already come out by the time I heard it. I think even Head Down had come out by the time I heard this record, if I'm being totally honest. So for me, that's the reason is sort of the first stage, we'll call it, rather than being bottom of the list. But yeah, definitely the first one. It's still worth listening to. Like I was saying, there's got some great records on it, like Memphis Sun, in particular. Lucky Girl's another one. The Man Who Wasn't There, that's another great tune. But yeah, very much them in their embryonic stage. And I think I'm right in saying that when a lot of these songs were written, Jay Buchanan hadn't quite joined the band fully yet, so they were almost sort of fully formed. So that might be some of the reason as well why it's not quite Rival Sons as we know and love.
I mean, we align. Obviously, I've gone with Before the Fire as the first one as well there. As you mentioned there, it's the early stages of Rival Sons. You know, you can see signs of where they're going to go. Yeah. As you say there, you know, Jay hasn't really come in, at least in a writing capacity yet. No. But there are a few in there. I mean, I quite like Memphis Sun and On My Way.
Yeah, another good one.
That one's a cool one. I think there's signs of what's to come. But yeah, I think there's just much better at this point. It's one of them. I think Jay would agree. Yes, moving on. Is there going to be an upset here?
My second choice, I went for the EP. The EP they released. I mean, with tracks like Torture and Soul on it, you can't deny the quality of the songwriting. It was really starting to come through. And this particular EP, I got when it was part of a classic rock thing. Like, classic rock released the EP here in the UK as part of like a free thing, and they'd just started really talking about Rival Sons. And I'd heard Pressure and Time, the single, and I'd gone off immediately, just went out and bought the album, which we'll get to in a second. And then the following month, that was when the EP was on the front of Classic Rock, and it's solid. It's 6 tracks, but as we're seeing the albums, it seemed only right to let the rest of the albums do the talking on the list, so to speak. But, you know, Torture is what is still to date, and Soul, still to date, 2 of my favourite Rival Sons songs.
I mean, we decided to include the EP in this ranking because, you know, it's not like they've got 15 albums. and there's a huge catalogue there. But me in particular, I felt that the EP was quite strong in regards of songs there. I mean,
very true.
But to surprise you, the EP isn't my next choice.
Yeah.
I'm going with this one because it's the one that I don't go back to as often as the other records.
Okay.
And so I'm going with Hollow Bones. Again, it's like picking your favorite child. So for the Rival Sons out there that are going, oh, you know, the fans that are going, oh, you're wrong, Ryan. It's just one of the things. Like, I love all of these, but it's Hollow Bones is the one. Well, that and Before the Fire are the two really that I just don't return to as often as the rest. I enjoy it. I think it's got some decent stuff in there. I like Fade Out and I like Thundering Voices. But I feel there aren't like singles that stand out to me. There aren't. As a whole cohesive like thing, it doesn't quite have the edge for me that the other stuff has. So for that reason, it is second to bottom. I know. But
so my next choice is the second album I ever personally heard of Boys and It's Head Down. Very strong record. You've got tracks like Keep On Swinging and Wild Animal and You Want To, Until the Sun Comes Up. You know, that opening four or five tracks are really, really solid. And I think it's a great record. But for me personally, the other releases just have that slight edge. And with a band like Rival Sons, for me, we're like when we done our albums of the years ones that we've done, and there's not a lot really between 4 and 1.
Yeah.
On another Headspin, Head Down could be further up the list. It's not. It was an album where I only saw one of the tours live. Whereas the others, I've seen a couple of shows, whether it be festival shows as well. So maybe that has something to do with it, with memories being held to live events. But, tracks like, and of course it has got Jordan on it as well, which Jordan I absolutely adore. That is one of my favourite songs. And there's a lot of killer songs on this. But I just feel like everything else has just got that slight edge, and it is like hair splitting kind of things now. With a band like this, with Rival Sons and me.
Yeah, I agree. We are splitting hairs at this point already. And speaking of that, my next choice is the Rival Sons EP that just comes just ahead of Hollow Bones for me. I think stuff like Sacred Tongue and Get What's Coming. I mean, I like Get What's Coming. It's like a catchy song. It's fun. It's, showcases Jay's vocals at an early stage. It's just, for me, it's just a little bit more catchy than something off Hollow Bones, even though it's not quite, if you were to look from maybe a critical standpoint, it's doesn't have the well-rounded sound of Rival Sons like Hollow Bones does. I just enjoy it a little bit more.
The thing though, there's a lot of those songs from the EP though. I would say in a live setting, probably I would say the songs. You're gonna probably hear Torture, Soul, Sacred Tongue a lot more than you would anything with the exception of Hollow Bones itself. Yeah. And, Tumbling Voices or whatever.
And maybe this is it. Maybe that's part of why I'm subconsciously putting Hollow Bones lower down, because we don't hear as much of that record live.
No.
Maybe so. I mean, I'd be interested to know why. Do they like it? I don't know.
You think they would?
Well, this is it, but who knows, really? I mean, they seem like an honest bunch of guys. I mean,
you do, yeah. For me, next is Hollow Bones. It's an album for me. I completely agree. There's no necessarily like a lot of singles. I love the title track. I think that's a great track. Love Thundering Voices. Pretty Face and Fade Out. I love their version of Black Coffee on it as well. That's a great rendition of Black Coffee. But then that's one of my favorite blues songs anyway. So that was always going to be a highlight. When I, was like, you get the album, you read a track list, and I'm like, please be the black coffee I think you're going to be. And it was. And I remember at the time, Beth Hart had also done a rendition as well at the time. I think it was with Joe Bonamassa. I could be wrong there. But I think I'm right in saying that. And, you know, I thought, oh, well, maybe they won't have done because Beth Hart and Joe Bonamassa have just done this. But yeah, their version of Black Coffee is fantastic on it. And for me, there might not be songs that you hear all the time off it and the obvious choices to go to. But I think it got to that point. I think it was that transitional record between the Great Western Valkyrie album and Feral Roots where they started to just shift slightly. And as a whole album, it grew on me a lot more as a whole piece. It's not something I don't think it's an album you can dip in and out of. I think it is an album where you have to sit with the whole record, and it does take a few runs of the whole record and it did for me to grab me. You know, it did take a few runs, but eventually it did really grab me as a whole piece. But that's sort of where I am.
I mean, maybe this is why I don't go back to it as often. Like, you got to do the entire record. Yeah. My next one is Head Down. I mean, as you mentioned when you selected it there, you know, Jordan, it's a staple, really, and Keep On Swinging as well.
Keep On Swinging.
Yeah, and I felt, having listened to all of these quite recently, you could see that Head Down was a moment where, at least production-wise, things had taken a step up.
Yeah.
And it was really starting to sound like the Rival Sons that we know today. So I think that there's that solid foundation there, and I felt like they've just continuously built on that, what they, you know, going forward. So that's why it's kind of in my middle of the pack, really. But I do feel that simply compared to what's coming after it, with the exception of Hollow Bones, in my opinion anyway, I felt everything else was stronger. So again, it's just so tough.
So the next album is the album that brought me into the band, and that's the Pressure and Time record.
Right. See, I thought this would be higher on your list, Larry.
It was high on my list. It was high out for a long, long time, and it's an album that holds a lot of memories. Like I say, you know, I first heard the single Pressure and Time, and I said to Scott when I got to interview him last year, this is an album that really brought me out of the funk, music wise. Not to get too deep and heavy, but when I lost my dad to cancer, and because music was a big part of our relationship, it was tough for me to listen to records for a while because we went to so many gigs together. Pretty much every record in my collection had a memory link somewhere along the line to my dad. So it was for a period, it was like really awkward to listen to stuff I enjoyed. And then I heard the Pressure and Time single, and I was like, man, I've just got to find this album. I've got to go get it. And I went and bought the record, and I stuck it on. And obviously, this is a band that are, sadly, because my dad would have absolutely loved Rival Sons, they were definitely his sort of thing, but not connected to my dad in any way. And that's no disrespect, of course, but I could listen to it with a clean slate almost, if you like. And this record came in and took me out of that funk, man, and just it was too good not to enjoy. It's bangers all the way through, from All the Way Over the Road all the way through to Face of Light. And I was definitely reminded last year when they did their 10th anniversary tour of that record, the songs on it that, you know, you almost forget, tracks like White Noise and Face of Light that I mentioned, and Save Me and Get Mine as well, are all absolutely storming tracks. And so, yeah, it's an album that means a lot to me. But if I'm being critical, because of what we're saying about stuff as they go along, I think there's a reason that it's here and not at the top. I think since they've gone on, they've grown, they've developed, their songwriting's craft has gone on and on. But although it is definitely up there, one of my favourite albums ever, I think it's only fair to put it where it is rather than a little higher, which would be purely, if I put it higher, it would be purely for memories and nostalgia kind of thing. And they aren't a band that are a nostalgic band. I know they did the anniversary tour last year for this record, but as a rule, they are driving forward. And I think, like you were saying earlier, they've continually improved their game. So yeah, for my reason, that's where it's going there.
I mean, it's when you were talking there, it reminds me of this question that I do sometimes throw out there. what's that band that was your band? And it seems like very much with Pressure and Time, that was your record. So it was like, this is the one I resonate with. And yeah, I certainly had that. But my choice next, I think this will be higher on your list. It's Great Western Valkyrie.
Yeah.
See the look on your face. See, I love this record. I think from this point onwards, they're all top draw.
Really?
For other bands, it'd be probably their best record. But yeah, I mean, it's got so much in there. Electric Man. I mean, what a single. Yeah, it feels again like this was a big step up for them at the time. Going from, wasn't it Head Down? That was their previous one at the time. Yeah, so going from Head Down to Great Western Valkyrie, there's a huge jump there. I think perhaps with the exception of Jordan, with that one single. But as an album as a whole, I feel it's far superior.
Top three now, man. My third is Great Western Valkyrie.
See, I knew you were gonna. I thought you may have put it in second. You know.
And Great West for a long time. This is my favorite Rival Sons album for a long time. But you know, like you said, it sounded like a real shift. It was obviously the first record after their original bass player Robin Everhart left and Dave Best came into play. And with that, you know, at that point, I'd heard, you know, the first two records that I'd heard, and that point, Pressure and Time and Head Down. And then it was announced that, you know, Robin Everhart wasn't one for the road, and he just decided, you know, I've done it. I want to go do something else. And I was a bit gutted because I just thought, here's a band I can really get my teeth into and be so excited about. And now a component's left. And those earlier records, like the Pressure and Time and Head Down records, you know, the bass lines that Robin was doing on those. And as a bass player, I always listen out for that. Were great. Yeah, this really cool kind of full on like Motown kind of sound he was playing. Really, really great bass player, really solid. And there was that part of me that thought, oh no, they've got rid of one quarter is gone, another one's going to come in. How much is that going to change? And is that then going to like make it a bit unstable while they find their feet with one another again? And I couldn't have been more wrong. They came out with Great Western Valkyrie, and from the moment I heard Electric Man, it was like, fuck. Like, there's something really, really special about this record, and all the way through, I mean, it just doesn't let up. There's many texture to this album. There's, you know, you got tracks like Where I've Been, for example, which is an absolute favorite of mine, and you can always hear the pain in Jay's voice when he's singing there. I think it's one of his finest vocal performances on it. And you got all the way through, you go, you know, Play the Fool and Good Times and Open My Eyes and Good Luck and Secret, and it's in Bellstar. It's just a fantastic record. And for me, I was with you. I didn't think when that record came out, I went, right, okay, they can't beat this.
The beat. Yeah,
they can't. They might equal it, but they can't beat it. But it's my number 3.
Yes, so you're wrong 2 times.
Not the first time I've been wrong, mate.
My next pick. Now, you were saying about, I'm going to go with critical and not nostalgia or whatever. I'm going with like semi-nostalgia, semi kind of enjoyment. I'm going to go with Pressure and Time. Just above Great Western Valkyrie, because I feel it's just such a catchy record, and it's the first record that I was like, wow, this is Rival Sons. And when I was making the trailer for interviewing Jay, I was like, I have to find some way of fitting in the track Pressure and Time into this, even though we're doing a Darkfighter album kind of centric thing. I've got to find a way of doing it. Yeah. Because it's just, I mean, that song in particular as well. I think if they played a gig where they didn't play Pressure and Time, I think people would be like coming away going like, what's that about?
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah.
Well, I remember like running, like me and Joe didn't live together at the time when that track came out, or when I heard it the first time. And I had the day off work for whatever reason. And I sort of like nossing about as you do, because I think we were going to a gig that night, so I just took the day off and heard the Pressure and Time, and I was like, I need to go find this band before I heard the record, and I think I played the song on loop for God knows how long. Just that riff, as soon as that Pressure and Time bass line kicked in, going back to what I was saying. And I remember just like Joe's, me and Joe went living together, and I like ran over to hers, and as soon as I pretty much opened the door, I was there on YouTube, like, you need to listen to this. And Joe's like, okay, Lee's found a band, which now Joe loves as well. But yeah, that record did have a huge impact, man.
And it's just got this, I mean, like the first track there, All Over the Road, it's got this real kind of cool retro vibe that I quite like. Yeah, I think it's a very influential record. You know, I look at quite a few bands in this kind of new wave of classic rock scene, and it feels like they're pulling from this kind of era. Rival Sons quite a few times. So yeah, for my reason, well, for that reason, that's why it's in at number 3 there. Top 2, serious stuff.
So yeah, my number 2 is Feral Roots.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Feral Roots, number 2. If I'm honest, on like Great Western Valkyrie was like an initial smack. It was an initial hit, bang. Yeah. Electric Man straight out the gate. It just continues that, like carries that wave all the way through. And the first track I heard it was like, wow, this is great. Feral Roots, and again, great opening track would Do Your Worst. But it was one that was a definite grower. Like I thought, oh, this is a really cool record. But the more I listened to it, the more it kind of revealed itself a bit more. And tracks like Look Away and Imperial Joy and All Directions, songs that didn't necessarily hit me with a sucker punch the first time I listened to them, really kind of opened up, and you kind of got immersed in it. And to me, the album has now grown to a point where it is above Great Western Valkyrie. Great Western Valkyrie hit me with a sucker punch and stayed there. Feral Roots kind of opened up and developed and let me sort of discover more sides of it a lot longer, I think. Tracks like Sugar on the Bone and Back in the Woods and the title track itself, and Shooting Stars, which I just absolutely adore. When Shooting Star, I mean, what a way to close an album. It felt like if you went to, and I know they're a band who like to, keep looking forward, and they actually did the Pressure and Time tour last year, but I think if they were to do in 10, 15 years time, whatever, and do a Feral Roots anniversary, I think Shooting Stars would be like a perfect closer of a set. It felt like that kind of vibe, but I'd listened to it through, had its peaks and troughs, and then it just finishes on this complete epic.
As a surprise to many, Feral Roots is my number 2 as well.
Yeah.
I was jostling with Feral Roots because I love Feral Roots. I think that's, for a while I thought, I'm wrong about Great Western Valkyrie. Feral Roots is the pinnacle, and then I was wrong again. Like the title track there, Feral Roots, it was one of the ones that I would have on repeat quite a lot when this record came out. I mean, Back in the Woods, it's just a cool song. I mean, it's ridiculous. That opening drum section. Like it's kind of got this kind of John Bonham thing going on there, and I love that kind of stuff. Sugar on the Bone. I mean, they call him the Fuzzlord for a reason, isn't it? I mean, it's just all of the fuzz. But yeah, I mean, it was, in my opinion, I mean, it was Grammy nominated with Do Your Worst. I think that it should probably, in my view anyway, I think it should probably have won a Grammy.
Definitely.
Because I felt like lyrically it was such a big step up. And sonically, it's again another progression. But it seems like we have the same number 1 currently, anyway.
I think we do.
Ironically, not for marketing purposes, but ironically, is the new record Darkfighter. Not that we're sponsored by Roller Sons or anything. The strange thing, like when I was given the go ahead to go and interview Jay, there was a piece. I was very excited for it because they're one of my favorite bands. But there was also a piece of me that was like, "Oh God, I hope this record is really good."
Yeah.
Because I'm not very good at lying. So there's a piece of me. I'm getting all of these things. I'm getting the email, with the Atlantic Records logo on it, and I'm thinking, really hope this is good. Like I'm feeling the pressure for them, really, because to follow Feral Roots is very difficult. As I say, at this point in time, I was thinking like this is their pinnacle of their career.
Yeah.
And then I played Darkfighter. And it has a different flavour.
Definitely.
It's, pardon the pun, darker. But it's much more complex. And I think as musicians, it's something to be like very, very proud of. It's such a step up. It's, as we've both spoke about, it feels like a personal record.
Really does.
Obviously that track Dark Side that we chatted about with Jay, very personal experience in life, and it's interesting. Interesting. We've got we're in this strange position where for the first time in a year we're going to have another album come out, Lightbringer. I'm not going to say that Darkfighter is the pinnacle of their career this time because I've been wrong twice before. So I'm not going to say that this time. But I heard that first single, Nobody Wants to Die.
What a track!
Again, it was like, wow, this is great.
As soon as that riff came in, it was just like, as soon as like you say, and the video was great as well. The video. Yeah. Hilarious, just like semi kind of Quentin Tarantino thing going on. It was brilliant, and here Nobody Wants to Die. And as soon as that riff kicked in, I was like, oh, fucking hell, Rival Sons are back. And you get the impression that okay, well that's a very very solid single at least, because obviously at that point I'd heard the album, and like you, and because we both had our interviews confirmed at sort of similar times, and obviously we both talk socially, so both of us were kind of like, have you got the album yet? Yeah. And it's just like, I remember I did what I do with most albums, and it's like the gym test basically. Chuck it in my ears and it's my time, I don't have to worry about anything else. I'm just getting on with my workout, and whatever's in my ears is good. And opening track Mirrors comes in, and it was like, where does this come from?
Yeah.
And immediately I was like, well, that is a strong opener. Then it's Nobody Wants to Die after that, and then Bird in the Hand, which I'd obviously heard as a single as well. Things Rapture after that. But even after Rapture, it just doesn't let up, man.
No.
I know I tell a lie, it's Bright Light in between the two, isn't it? Which is a track. With Bright Light is a track. When I heard that, I was like, and I said this to Jay when I spoke to him, I was like, Is this going to be a single? Because I just like the first bit of the album where you're like, is this going to let up on being like up here? And it doesn't. And not only are all the songs up here in terms of riffs and catchiness that you could immediately get hooked into, it's also got that side of like Feral Roots as well, where because of the lyrical content and the themes within the album and like you say, excuse the pun, but darker sides to it, it just unveils more. And with the track Dark Side, I lost a friend to drugs as well. So when that came to the end of the album, and you got that kind of as a subject matter, though completely different stories, as everyone's individual battles are. It was like, whoa, like it really got me, and like that's why I'm really looking forward to Lightbringer coming out, because obviously. It's like, as Jay said to us both, this is like the sister album of Darkfighter. It's almost like the other side of the story to this record. And I'm I'm really excited to see where it takes us. Because the coin's very, very, very cool already.
I feel like this is going to be kind of the yin and yang pairing, light and dark. But something that really interested me with Darkfighter. I mean, Jay was speaking about songs like Bird in the Hand and Rapture. They don't have repetition in terms of it's like what is it, like notes. It's like there's no repeat. It's just a continuous progression, and he seemed quite proud of that at the time. I think they've been working on it for a while, but there's no repetition really, and it's quite interesting that you can make something like that work in an era where it has to be these catchy radio kind of things. That you can do something like that. I mean, I felt Rapture in particular was a real highlight. Not just because of Jay, but because it had a very unusual chord progression.
Right.
And it's offering something that they've never done before. I mean, this
feel like another step up.
Yeah, and this is the problem I've had with a couple of other bands in the past. Well, numerous other bands in the past, where when they get about 3-4 albums deep, it's very easy to fall into the trap of going, right, well, this was popular and this worked, so we're going to do more of that.
Yeah.
And they'd certainly hit a new level of popularity with Feral Roots, of course, Grammy nominated.
Yeah.
They could have quite easily have just gone, right, people like Feral Roots, so we'll do more of Feral Roots. But they haven't done that, and I really respect them for that. They've looked to kind of challenge themselves and go into this other territory. I mean, Jay was saying that he felt like he needs to do that. He needs to write in a different way.
Yeah.
And that always interests me, getting a band like that wants to push themselves rather than sit in a kind of safe space. So, I mean, that not just the reason for it being my favorite record currently, but it's one of my favorite bands currently because of that.
It's that progression, like you say. There's so many bands that I loved to the same sort of level way before Rival Sons came into my life. That I think, you think stereotypically, well, I've had a longer relationship with that artist or that band. So they should probably be like higher on my ranking of bands I love because I've loved them for longer. But there are certainly bands out there that I've loved for a long time, but they definitely kind of got to a peak and plateaued. Whereas I feel like you say, Rival Sons are constantly pushing themselves, constantly expanding, and constantly pushing the sort of boundaries of what's within their realm, if you like, in terms of songs. I don't think they just strike me as a band, and I get that impression more now that I've spoken with Jay and obviously Scott in last year as well. But they're just a band that will never say no to an idea they've got in the room. They'll make it sound like Rival Sons, whatever that idea might be. But I get the impression that nothing's ever beyond their reach. They never go, oh, we can't do that because we're Rival Sons and we don't do this type of song, or we don't do this melody. Or I think the only thing Jay and possibly Scott and Mike and Dave would ever do would be to go, oh no, we've already done that.
Yeah.
And it felt like with this record that not only are the songs great, but it's a different side of them once again. And I like the fact that, well, now, is it 7 albums in we've just counted?
Yeah, 7, I believe.
So like 7 albums and an EP in, and they can still surprise you. They can still cut something out that's that little bit left field. I mean, Dark Side is completely left field. Horse's Breath, which I really loved on the record, that's like another side completely as well. And yeah, I just love the fact that they're still pushing it, still doing it. And, Jay was clearly very excited for Lightbringer to come out already when I was chatting to him the other day about this record. So it could be interesting to see where it comes from, man.
Yes. For those that are saying that we both got this list wrong, you're wrong, this and the other. We want to know what your lists are, because I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to have different ordering.
Definitely.
I mean, at the time of this episode coming out, Darkfire will be very fresh in people's minds. So maybe that's a factor. Maybe it might be a grower. Who knows? But comment below. We want to know what are your what's your list, top to bottom. We want to know all of them. And let us know. I mean, I think the surprise. I think people will put pressure and time higher than we have.
I think so.
That's my guess. I think people will maybe put it at number 2 or number 1. I think it's just such a nostalgic record for people. I mean, we mentioned before there that, I mean, we kind of grew up around the time of that album. I think that might be a factor, but I could be wrong. So comment below, let us know, and maybe see you next time. If people want to check out our interviews with Jay, I mean, I believe, when are you releasing your?
I'll be releasing it on Friday the 2nd, so on release day of the album, so next Friday.
Right, so that'll have just come out, Lee's interview, and mine will have been out a while. So if you haven't seen mine by now, where are you? But if you want to go and check out Lee's as well, it will be here somewhere now. It will appear on your screen magically, and we will see you next time.